From Horowitz to Hugh Grant, from Grigori to Bellamy, from Yevgeny to PlayStation 3. There's one composer whose legacy has taken on a life of its own. That's right. Today, we're talking about
Chopin.
Chopin.
Chopin. Chopin.
Chopin.
Chopin.
Chopin.
Frédéric Chopin.
I know so few pianists that haven't had Chopin as a major part of their life.
I'm not sure we would have liked each other very much, but I love his music.
Born 200 years ago in 1810, Chopin lived to be only 39 years old in a life that was plagued with illness and grief. And yet, of all the amazing composers of piano music, Chopin seems to have achieved a kind of spiritual status that few others have. In fact, on Tonebase Premium, views for content on Chopin are almost twice as high as the second place composer. Sorry, Johann. Speaking of which, there is a ton of content on Tonebase Premium about Chopin that you definitely will want to check out, including this amazing lesson from Garrick Ohlsson teaching the first Ballade, to this absolutely wonderful lesson from Seymour Bernstein teaching the E minor Prelude. Click up here or check in the description below to find out more and to explore the whole catalog. So I wanted to know, what is it about Chopin that resonates with so many people? How did he become both a hero to his native Poland and to all of music history? What is behind the legend of Chopin?
His lover, George Sand, was explaining that he reminded her of someone who didn't even know where he was in the world, that he was from another world completely. And only when he sat to perform and didn't have to speak could you really hear his emotions coming out. Who is this person?
I'm Robert Fleitz from Tonebase, and today we're going to dig into the archetypes surrounding Chopin in order to help us better understand why he and his music have achieved this legendary status. With the help of a few Tonebase artists along the way, we are going to figure out why the heck do we love Chopin so much. Before we do, please be sure to give us a like and a subscribe. We are almost at 200,000 subscribers and you can help us get there. It just takes 1 second, it's right down there. We appreciate every single one of you. Without further ado, let's get going. When we think of Chopin, we often think of him as being a romantic composer. And as often as we might say that or think that, the terms romantic and romanticism can be a bit tricky to define. In music, we can basically think of romanticism as having two essential characteristics. The first is an emphasis on the individual human as the expressive agent of the artwork, a singular genius opening up revelations to us through their composition or performance. The second idea in romanticism is that the musical work itself becomes like a miniature world with the ability to express emotions as complex as even the establishment of national identity. And this goes beyond genre. A waltz is not simply a waltz. A mazurka, not simply a mazurka. These short forms have the potential to express entire universes. With Chopin, we can see easily how he fits the archetype of a romantic artist. This quote by his longtime lover, George Sand, summarizes quite well how even in his lifetime he was being romanticized in a way that I think really parallels well how we still think of him today.
Chopin's genius is the deepest, the most sensitive, and the most emotional in existence. He made a single instrument speak the language of the infinite. His music was full of unexpected nuances and, on occasions, bizarre, mysterious, tormented. Chopin's piano revealed to me the joys, obstacles, and tortures of his thought.
It's exactly the intimacy of Chopin's works that makes it really easy to imagine him sitting down at the piano and pouring out his soul into the instrument.
I think it's important that in interpreting Chopin, we make sure to always include moments of completely private feelings, like we're peeping in through the crack, watching him cry while he composes something.
The legendary author Oscar Wilde once said,
"After playing Chopin, I feel as if I had been weeping over sins that I had never committed, and mourning over tragedies that were not my own."
Of course, it's not just simply joy and sadness. Chopin's music often expresses multiple emotions at the same time in a kind of romantic grotesque.
Music tells of the dark, evil things.
Stylistic periods in music history are not so cut and dry, and indeed, Chopin was influenced both by what came before him.
Is he a classicist or a romanticist? The answer is yes. If you take the second scherzo with its cut and dried Beethovenian phrases, It's very tightly organized, and it's structured in a Beethovenian way.
as well as predicting possibly what came after.
I don't think it's a stretch to say that Chopin is the first impressionistic composer.
But Chopin was one of the first who took advantage of the purely sonorous possibilities of the piano.
Debussy himself once said that,
At the piano, Chopin discovered everything.
and later dedicated his own 12 etudes to him.
Chopin without the structure becomes sickening. Chopin without the magic becomes... He exists on this cusp of these two elements.
What I find fascinating about Chopin is that we have a composer that wrote primarily just for the piano. When we think of Chopin, we think of a pianist.
Right, so let's just quickly take stock of how much repertoire Chopin actually wrote for the piano. You've got concerti, you've got polonaises, you've got waltzes, mazurkas, scherzi, ballades, nocturnes, preludes, etudes, variations, and tons of other stuff. And basically all of these pieces are iconic. They form the core of a pianist's repertoire. These pieces literally shape our technique. But at the extremes of expressivity, Chopin asks us as pianists to do things that are not quite idiomatic to the instrument. For example, at his most lyrical moments, Chopin asks us to basically become a singer, playing the piano as though it's a human voice.
There's always a very beautiful bel canto which Chopin does. You can think of an opera singer singing something like...
And in the moments of most extreme expressive virtuosity, Chopin tends to make the technical writing a bit more idealistic than pianistic. For example, like in this moment in the Barcarolle.
We've all missed this one. It also occurs to a moment, you know something's very difficult, it's very intense, the hand is busy. Da, ba, ba, da, 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 da. Oh gosh.
Chopin wasn't really interested in extreme virtuosity as an end in itself, but rather as a tool for further expressivity, something that set him quite apart from the other piano hotshots of the 1830s in Paris.
It's not simply bravura octaves. There's always a refinement to Chopin's pianistic style.
Any discussion on Chopin as a pianist would not be complete without mentioning his etudes, which are a necessary part of any classical pianist's upbringing and have indeed given me plenty to cry about in my lifetime.
Technically, it is something that all pianists need to understand.
These etudes are really miraculous works of art. They're not just exercises.
Chopin's etudes provide an encyclopedia of musical and technical challenges that are worthwhile for any pianist of any level to try exploring. The Tonebase Premium platform has a bunch of really helpful guides for tackling these monstrosities. Marina Lomazov of the Eastman School of Music has an excellent etude training course on Tonebase that really helps you to break down what's going on technically in these pieces. There's also courses from Frederick Chu, Norman Krieger, and Garrick Ohlsson, as well as many other pianists. I personally find it extremely helpful to check out the Tonebase catalog with these pieces, as I myself am trying to learn more of them this year. Again, you can read more about it in the link in the bio or right up here. There is, however, a downside to Chopin's legendary status as a pianist. Because he wrote mostly for the piano in these very intimate forms, it can be tempting, and has been tempting for many over the years, to think of him as a lesser composer. This impression of Chopin existed already during his lifetime.
Well, Chopin suffers, as did Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff, from being too listenable. It's like dessert. Anything that gorgeous can't be nutritious.
Although many of Chopin's works probably started as fanciful improvisations at the piano, the final versions are often filled with quite a bit of compositional complexity. Chopin was known to sit at the piano for weeks on end, rewriting the same phrase over and over and over again until he got it right. As we alluded to earlier, his compositional influences came from earlier times, when form and technique were of utmost importance.
He really, I think, liked two composers. He liked Mozart and he liked Bach. He liked Bellini a lot as well. Nobody else. And when he went to Mallorca with George Sand and wrote the Preludes, he only took one piece of printed music with him, and that was the Well-Tempered Clavier.
When Chopin prepared for his recitals of his own music, what do you think he practiced? He spent all of his time practicing preludes and fugues. Naturally, his writing is influenced by the contrapuntal techniques that he learned from Bach.
The influence of Bach is particularly clear in a work such as the Etude Opus 10 No. 1, which mirrors almost directly Bach's first prelude. Chopin as a master of melody. It's often in his counterpoint where the real spirit of the work is revealed.
He starts from the octave and then minimizing the interval like a statement that the best journey is not to the outer world. The best journey is to the inner world, to the core of it.
Chopin's mazurkas and polonaises were based on known Polish national musical forms. And indeed, Chopin's relationship to his Polish homeland is probably one of the most important aspects of his biography when it comes to understanding his music and his legacy. Poland that Chopin was born into was officially under the jurisdiction of Russia, Prussia, and Austria, and didn't gain full independence until 1918. In November 1830, Polish rebels tried and ultimately failed to overthrow the Russian rule in a year-long revolt that became known as the November Insurrection. After this failure of the Polish to gain independence, Polish culture became severely repressed. Chopin, who was away on a concert tour in Vienna when this insurrection began, never returned to his Polish homeland. So then Chopin's success abroad became extremely important to the Polish people during a time when building up their national identity and culture was of significant importance. We can see this by looking at reactions to Chopin's music from Polish critics of the time.
It is pleasing to the Polish people, when reflecting on such a magnificent talent, nay, even genius, to remember that in the greater part of his compositions, as well as in his performance, the spirit of the nation was evident.
Chopin's nationalism was also clear to his Western European contemporaries, but in a slightly different way. To them, Chopin was strange and exotic, his devotion to his homeland almost objectified as this unusually distinctive feature about him. For example, Berlioz once wrote,
"His melodies, all impregnated with Polish elements, have something naively untamed about them that charms and captivates by its very strangeness."
Perhaps a bit more astutely, Robert Schumann also identified the political power of Chopin's music.
If the mighty autocrat of the North knew what a dangerous enemy threatened him in Chopin's works, he would forbid this music. Chopin's works are guns buried in flowers.
Beyond this idealization and objectification and exoticization, Chopin was extremely grief-stricken and constantly homesick. And he related really deeply to the feelings of estrangement and alienation that he shared with other Polish expats whose homeland was in a state of deep tragedy and turmoil. The work of the Polish poet Adam Mickiewicz likely provided Chopin with a great deal of inspiration as he searched for a compositional form that could sufficiently contain all of the feelings that he had about his homeland in all of their complexity. One excellent example of this is the second Ballade, in which the drastic contrasts of material could be seen as relating to the content of Mickiewicz's poems. On the Tonebase Premium platform, there's a beautiful video of the pianist and Curtis professor Gary Graffman discussing how this ballade relates to the Mickiewicz poem and how a pianist could use this knowledge to interpret the piece.
That should represent the lake, and if it didn't completely, it's the pianist's fault.
I definitely recommend you checking this out. It's a really lovely and helpful interview. I think a pretty amazing depiction of the paradox between Chopin's fragility and the kind of legend that was already being constructed around him during his lifetime can be found in the 1991 film The Blue Note, directed by fellow Polish expat to Paris, Andrzej Żuławski. In this powerful scene, Chopin plays his own funeral march while ghosts begin to surround him dressed in the colors of the Polish flag. Music philosopher Nicholas Cook reminds us that
it is through the interaction of music and interpreter, text and context, that meaning is constructed. Music has the potential for specific meanings to emerge under specific circumstances.
Perhaps it's exactly this that is so miraculous about Chopin's music. It's unmistakably his, and yet it takes on so many different meanings in so many different circumstances. His music was a point of pride for the Polish resistance, an object of exotic wonder for his German contemporaries, and a source of great inspiration for the amazing French and Russian composers who came after him, such as Fauré, Debussy, and Balakirev. And his music continues to inspire. In the 20th and 21st centuries, Chopin's music is an integral part of the musical landscape and belongs just as much to communities in East Asia as well. The meaning around his music will continue to change over time. For me personally, Chopin's music feels like a refuge. It's been in my life for decades, and yet I never get tired of hearing it. I never get sick of seeing it on concert programs. I love working on it myself, and I'm always finding something new in it. It always helps me feel more grounded and more spiritually fulfilled as a pianist. I have no doubt that Chopin's music will be continuing to develop in different ways for many, many years to come.
For Chopin, music was never a finished product. He didn't build cathedrals in stone. He plucked perfume from the air, if you will, or human drama.
It projects deep emotion of the most intense kind, of a man who is really dying in his 30s. Musicians are very fortunate people because it's rewarding for us to go into that area of emotional understanding. Through the discipline of music, you project into everything you do in life.
Thanks so much for following me along this journey into Chopin today. Be sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button, the little bell, and be sure to check out Tonebase Premium, which is full of amazing content on Chopin. What you saw in this video is just a small sampling of what there is to check out there. And thanks so much to all the pianists, composers, and musicologists whose work was super integral in putting this together. I'm Robert from Tonebase, and I will see you next time.